You've been feeling it, haven't you? That strange lightness in your chest when you think of him, not the ache you expected, not the longing that used to pull you under, something else, something quieter, something that feels almost like relief, but deeper. Like the air before dawn, like the moment before a door opens. You can't explain it to anyone because how do you describe a feeling that has no name? How do you tell someone that the man who walked away, who went silent, who disappeared into himself, is somehow closer now than when he was standing right in front of you? You feel him differently. Not in your thoughts, in your body, in the sudden warmth that floods your heart at random moments, in the peace that washes over you when you're doing nothing at all, in the dreams that feel less like fantasy and more like memory. He's not reaching out. He's not calling. He's not explaining himself or asking for forgiveness. But something in him is moving. And you, without knowing how, are feeling every single shift. Your soul recognizes this, doesn't it? Even when your mind tries to dismiss it as wishful thinking or projection, or the desperate hope of a heart that's been waiting too long. But this isn't hope. Hope feels fragile. This feels solid. This feels like truth arriving before the proof does. Like knowing it's going to rain before the first drop falls. You've stopped checking your phone with that old urgency. You've stopped replaying conversations or analyzing his last words for hidden meaning. Not because you've given up, but because something inside you has shifted too. You're not waiting anymore. You're witnessing. And what you're witnessing is a man coming undone in the most sacred way possible. A man facing himself. A man choosing, for the first time, to feel instead of run. And even though he hasn't said a word, you can feel the entire architecture of his inner world rearranging itself, brick by brick, breath by breath, belief by belief. If you felt this quiet knowing, this unexplainable certainty that something is changing beneath the surface, I want you to know you're not imagining it. Drop a comment below and share what you've been sensing, or simply type "I trust the divine unfolding" to claim this energy. And if these messages speak to your soul, subscribe so you never miss the guidance that's meant for you. This is not because you're clinging to a fantasy or refusing to move on. This is because the connection you share operates on a frequency that doesn't require physical presence to transmit truth. You are feeling his transformation because your souls are still in conversation. They never stopped, even when the words dried up, even when the distance grew, even when it seemed like he had forgotten you entirely. The soul doesn't forget. It doesn't disconnect. It doesn't move on. It moves through. And right now, his soul is moving through the densest, darkest, most necessary terrain of his entire journey. He is walking through the valley of his own resistance. And you, whether you realize it or not, are the light he's walking toward. Let me tell you what's really happening. Let me show you what you already know but haven't been able to name. The divine masculine is not running anymore. He's not avoiding. He's not numbing. He's descending into the parts of himself he buried so long ago he forgot they existed. Into the wounds he covered with achievement, with logic, with control. Into the fear that has shaped every decision he's made in this connection. He is finally facing the truth that he loves you, that he's terrified, that he doesn't know how to hold something this big, that every wall he built was built to protect a heart that didn't believe it deserved to be loved this deeply. And now those walls are cracking, not because you pushed, not because you begged, but because his soul has reached a point where staying closed is more painful than opening. Have you noticed how you've stopped feeling his resistance as rejection? How his silence no longer feels like abandonment? That's because you're no longer interpreting his journey through the lens of your wounds. You're seeing it for what it is: a man in the process of becoming, a soul in the fire of transformation. And the reason you can see it so clearly now is because you've done your own work. You've walked through your own fire. You've faced your own fears. You've stopped making his love the thing that completes you and started becoming complete on your own. And that shift, that internal sovereign shift, has changed the entire energetic dynamic between you. This is the part of the journey that no one talks about. The part where the feminine stops chasing and starts embodying. The part where she realizes she was never waiting for him to choose her. She was waiting for herself to choose herself. And the moment she does, everything changes. Not because he suddenly wakes up, but because she stops feeding the frequency of lack. She stops broadcasting need. She stops sending out the signal that says, "I am incomplete without you." And in that absence, in that sacred emptiness, a new signal emerges. One that says, "I am whole, I am sovereign, I am the temple, and if you want to enter, you must be whole too." The masculine feels this. He may not understand it, he may not have words for it, but he feels the shift in the field. He feels the pressure lift. He feels the space open. And in that space, for the first time, he has room to breathe, room to feel, room to choose from a place of truth instead of fear. This is why his transformation is happening now. Not because you left him alone, not because you moved on, but because you stopped waiting and started becoming. You stopped needing him to validate the connection and started validating it yourself. You stopped looking for him to prove his love and started proving your own to yourself. And that self-love, that self-sovereignty, that self-honoring is the most powerful catalyst in the entire twin flame journey. Here's what's happening inside him right now. He's remembering, not in his mind, in his body, in his heart, in the quiet moments when he's alone and there's no one to perform for. He's remembering what it felt like to be near you. The safety, the terror, the aliveness. He's remembering the way you looked at him, not with judgment, but with recognition. Like you saw past all his armor straight into the core of who he really is. And that seeing terrified him, because no one had ever seen him like that before. No one had ever loved the parts of him he didn't even know existed. So he ran, not from you, from the mirror you held up, from the truth you reflected, from the love he didn't believe he was worthy of receiving. But now, in the silence, in the solitude, in the stripping away of all his distractions, he's starting to see what you saw. He's starting to feel what you felt. He's starting to understand that the connection wasn't a threat. It was an invitation to become real, to become whole, to become the man his soul has been calling him to be since before he was born. And that invitation is still there. It never left. It's been waiting, patient, steady, unshakable, just like you. The masculine's awakening doesn't look like a dramatic revelation. It looks like small moments of honesty. It looks like him sitting with feelings he used to push away. It looks like him questioning beliefs he inherited from a father who never learned how to feel. It looks like him crying for the first time in years and not knowing why. It looks like him thinking of you and instead of running from the feeling, letting it stay. Letting it move through him, letting it teach him something about himself he's been afraid to learn. This is the work. This is the transformation. And it's happening quietly, privately, sacredly, in the chambers of his own heart. You might be wondering, how do I know this is real? How do I know I'm not just making this up to feel better? Let me give you the signs. Let me show you what to look for. Not in him, in yourself. Because the signs of his transformation show up in your field first. They show up as peace where there used to be panic, as clarity where there used to be confusion, as trust where there used to be fear. You stop obsessing. You stop checking. You stop needing to know when or how or if. You start living. You start creating. You start remembering who you were before. This connection consumed you. And in that remembering, you become magnetic in a way you've never been before. The first sign is energetic. You feel lighter, not because you've detached, but because you've released the weight of trying to control the outcome. You've surrendered, not in defeat, in faith. You've handed the timeline over to the divine and stepped back into your own life. And the moment you do that, you feel him differently. Not as absence, as presence. A warm, steady presence that doesn't demand anything from you. That just exists. Quiet, constant, real. You might feel him in your dreams. Not the chaotic dreams of longing, but the calm dreams of reunion, where you're talking, where you're laughing, where everything feels easy and right. These dreams are not fantasies. They're rehearsals. Your souls are meeting in the space between worlds, preparing for what's coming. The second sign is synchronistic. You start seeing signs everywhere. His name, his birthday, numbers that mean something to both of you, songs that take you back to moments you shared. These aren't coincidences. They're confirmations. The universe is showing you that the connection is still alive, that it's still moving, that it's still unfolding exactly as it's meant to. You don't need to chase the signs. You don't need to interpret them obsessively. You just need to notice them, acknowledge them. Let them reassure you that you're not alone in this, that the divine is orchestrating something far bigger than your mind can comprehend. The third sign is emotional. You start feeling waves of emotion that aren't yours. Sudden sadness that passes as quickly as it came. Unexpected joy that bubbles up for no reason. A deep ache in your chest that feels like grief and relief all at once. These are his emotions bleeding into your field. He's feeling, he's processing, he's releasing. And because your hearts are connected, you're feeling it too. Don't absorb it. Don't carry it. Just witness it. Let it move through you. Let it be proof that he's doing the work, that he's facing himself, that he's changing. The fourth sign is intuitive. You just know. You can't explain how. You can't point to evidence. But deep in your bones, in the quiet of your soul, you know he's coming back. Not the old version. A new one, the one who's ready. The one who's whole. The one who can meet you where you are. This knowing doesn't make you anxious. It makes you calm. It makes you patient. It makes you trust the timing even when the timing makes no logical sense. This is your soul speaking. Listen to it. It knows things your mind will never understand. The fifth sign is behavioral. You start choosing yourself in ways you never did before. You set boundaries. You honor your needs. You stop shrinking to make space for someone who isn't even in the room. You start living as if the union has already happened. Not because you're pretending, but because you've realized that union isn't something that happens when he comes back. It's something that happens when you come home to yourself. And the moment you do, the moment you fully embody your own wholeness, he feels it. He feels the shift. He feels the invitation. And something in him starts moving toward you. Now let's talk about what's happening on his side. Let's talk about the divine masculine's journey through this transformation, because understanding his process will help you trust yours. The masculine is not logical right now. He's not in his head, he's in his heart. And for a man who's spent his entire life living from the neck up, this is terrifying. He doesn't know how to navigate feelings. He doesn't have a map. He doesn't have a strategy. All he has is the raw, unfiltered experience of emotions he's been avoiding for years. And those emotions are demanding to be felt. He's grieving, not just the connection, but the life he thought he was supposed to live, the identity he built, the version of himself that felt safe because it was small. He's grieving the father who never taught him how to love, the mother who never showed him he was enough, the culture that told him feelings were weakness and vulnerability was failure. He's grieving all the times he shut down when he should have opened up, all the times he ran when he should have stayed, all the times he chose safety over truth. This grief is necessary. It's the breaking open that has to happen before the light can get in. He's also terrified of feeling this much, terrified of wanting something he doesn't know how to hold, terrified of failing, of hurting you, of proving that he's not the man you see when you look at him. This fear is not rational, it's primal. It's the fear of annihilation. Because to love you fully, to meet you in the depth you're calling him to, he has to die. Not physically, egoically. He has to let go of every story he's told himself about who he is, every defense mechanism, every coping strategy, every wall, and death, even ego death, is terrifying. But here's what's miraculous. He's doing it anyway. He's walking into the fear. He's sitting with the grief. He's letting himself feel. And every time he does, every time he chooses presence over avoidance, he gets stronger. He gets clearer. He gets closer to the man he's meant to be. The man who can hold you. The man who can honor the connection. The man who can stand in his truth without apology or defense. This is the masculine rising, not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. Inevitably, irreversibly, deep inside, he knows you're the one. He's always known. That's why he ran. That's why he resisted. Because knowing and being ready are two different things. And he wasn't ready. He couldn't hold the magnitude of what you represent, the love, the truth, the mirror, the call to become more than he believed himself capable of being. But now, in the silence, in the solitude, in the sacred stripping away of everything false, he's becoming ready. He's building capacity. He's strengthening the parts of himself that were too weak to hold you before. And when he's done, when the transformation is complete, he won't come back because he needs you. He'll come back because he's ready to meet you, as an equal, as a partner, as a man who knows his worth and recognizes yours. Something inside him is breaking open. The walls around his heart are crumbling, not all at once. Slowly, painfully, beautifully. Every memory of you is resurfacing with new meaning. Every moment you shared is being rewritten in his consciousness, not as something he lost, as something he's been preparing to reclaim. He's starting to understand that you weren't the problem. Fear was, conditioning was, the belief that he wasn't enough was. And now that he's facing those beliefs, now that he's questioning them, now that he's dismantling them piece by piece, there's space for something new to emerge. A new story, a new identity, a new way of being in relationship. One rooted in presence instead of performance, in vulnerability instead of control, in truth instead of fear. His soul remembers what his mind denies. It remembers the contract, the agreement, the sacred promise you made to each other before you came into these bodies, to find each other, to trigger each other, to awaken each other, to love each other into wholeness. His soul knows you're not just a person he met. You're the mirror, the catalyst, the key. And no matter how far he runs, no matter how long he hides, his soul will always pull him back to you. Because this isn't just a love story, it's a soul contract. And soul contracts don't expire. They don't dissolve, they don't disappear, they just wait, patient, eternal, unbreakable. He's not running from you, he's running toward himself. And every step he takes toward himself is a step toward you. Because you're not separate, you never were. You're two halves of the same soul, two expressions of the same consciousness, two notes in the same song. And the closer he gets to his truth, the closer he gets to yours. This is the sacred paradox of the twin flame journey. The more you individuate, the more you unite. The more you become yourself, the more you become each other. The more you let go, the more you come together. Now let's talk about what this means for you, for the divine feminine who's been holding the frequency, who's been doing the work, who's been waiting, not passively, but actively choosing herself, actively healing her wounds, actively embodying the love she wants to receive. This is your moment, not the moment he comes back, the moment you realize you don't need him to come back to be whole. You already are, you always were. The connection didn't complete you, it revealed you. It showed you depths of love you didn't know you were capable of. It cracked you open so the light could pour in. It brought you to your knees so you could learn to stand in your power. It broke your heart so you could rebuild it stronger, wiser, more sovereign than before. You are not just the doorway. You are the temple. You are not just the invitation. You are the destination. You are not just holding space for his awakening. You are the awakening. The moment you step fully into this truth, the moment you own your power, your worth, your divinity, everything shifts. Not because you're trying to make something happen, but because you've stopped trying. You've stopped efforting. You've stopped performing. You've stopped waiting for external validation and started validating yourself. And that self-validation, that self-honoring, that self-love is the most magnetic force in the universe. Your silence speaks louder than any words you could say. Your peace is more powerful than any plea. Your sovereignty is more attractive than any chase. When you stop needing him to see you and start seeing yourself, he feels it. When you stop needing him to choose you and start choosing yourself, he notices. When you stop needing him to love you and start loving yourself, he awakens. Not because you're manipulating him, but because you've changed the frequency. You've shifted the field. You've become the vibration that calls him home. The moment you stop waiting and start becoming, everything transforms. You stop checking your phone. You stop replaying conversations. You stop wondering if he's thinking about you, not because you don't care, but because you're too busy living, too busy creating, too busy becoming the fullest expression of yourself. And in that fullness, in that aliveness, in that radiant embodiment of your own divinity, you become irresistible, not just to him, to life itself. Opportunities open, doors unlock, magic happens, because you're no longer living in lack, you're living in abundance, and abundance attracts abundance. You don't awaken him. You cannot force his spiritual evolution, cannot push him into consciousness, cannot drag him into the light he's not yet ready to see. You awaken yourself. You turn inward and do the deep, sacred, sometimes brutally honest work of remembering who you truly are beneath all the conditioning, beneath all the wounds, beneath all the stories you've been told about what love should look like. And your awakening awakens him. Not through words or explanations or convincing arguments, but through the pure energetic transmission of your transformation. Through the undeniable shift in your frequency that ripples across the quantum field connecting your souls. Through the magnetic pull of your elevated consciousness that calls to the dormant divinity within him. This is the truth they don't tell you when they're selling you courses on how to manifest your twin flame, when they're promising you 3 steps to reunion, when they're feeding you the narrative that you need to do certain things to make him come back. The divine feminine is not passive. She is not the damsel in distress, not the helpless maiden locked in a tower, not the sleeping princess waiting for true love's kiss to bring her back to life. She's not waiting by the window for her prince to return, watching the horizon with tears in her eyes, marking days on a calendar, living in a state of suspended animation until he decides she's worth coming back for. She's building her own kingdom. She's constructing an empire of self-love, erecting walls of healthy boundaries, creating gardens of inner peace, designing palaces of purpose and passion that have nothing to do with whether he's there or not. She's claiming her own throne. She's stepping into her rightful place as the queen of her own life, the sovereign ruler of her own reality, the divine authority over her own energy and choices and future. She's remembering her own power. The power that was always there, but got buried under trauma and heartbreak and societal programming that told her she was incomplete without a man, that her worth was measured by whether someone chose her, that her value was determined by her relationship status. And when she does, when she fully embodies her sovereignty, when she stops performing femininity and starts embodying it, when she stops seeking validation and starts generating it from within, the masculine has no choice but to rise, not because she's demanding it, not because she's issuing ultimatums or manipulating circumstances or playing games to trigger his ego, but because her frequency demands it, because energy doesn't lie, because vibration speaks louder than words, because her elevated state of being creates a new standard, a new baseline, a new level of consciousness that his soul recognizes even when his ego is still resisting. Her energy calls it forth. Like a lighthouse calling ships home through the storm, like a tuning fork causing other strings to vibrate at the same frequency, like the sun drawing flowers to open and reach toward its light. Her presence makes it inevitable. Not immediate, perhaps, not on her preferred timeline, not without his own journey and struggles and dark nights of the soul, but inevitable nonetheless, because twin flame connections operate on spiritual law, and one soul's ascension creates an energetic vacuum that pulls the other soul upward. Union begins when you stop needing it to complete you. When you stop believing the lie that you're half a person wandering the earth looking for your other half. When you stop feeling like there's a U-shaped hole in your chest that only he can fill. When you stop organizing your entire existence around the possibility of reunion. When you stop making it the thing that will finally make you happy, finally make you whole, finally make you enough. When you stop thinking I'll be okay once we're together, I'll be able to breathe again once he comes back. My life will finally begin once we're in union. When you realize you already are all those things, complete in your own being, whole in your own soul, enough in your own existence. With or without him, with or without his recognition of the connection, with or without his spiritual awakening, with or without his ability to show up for what you're calling in, with or without the physical reunion, with or without the 3D manifestation of what you feel in the 5D, with or without the tangible evidence that this connection is going where your soul knows it's meant to go, with or without the fairy tale ending, with or without the wedding, the house, the happily ever after that society taught you to measure your life against. You are enough. Not as an affirmation you repeat while secretly believing the opposite, not as a mantra you say to convince yourself, but as a lived truth, an embodied reality, a cellular knowing that permeates every aspect of your being. You have always been enough. Before you met him, before you knew twin flames existed, before this journey cracked you open and rebuilt you from the inside out, you were already complete, already divine, already worthy of everything you desire. And the moment you truly believe that, the moment you stop intellectually understanding it and start viscerally knowing it, the moment it moves from your head to your heart to your very bones, the moment you embody that, the moment your actions and choices and daily life reflect this truth rather than contradicting it, the moment you live from that truth, the moment it becomes the foundation from which you operate rather than something you're trying to achieve, union becomes possible. Not as a completion, not as the missing piece finally clicking into place, not as the thing that makes you whole. As a celebration, as two already full cups choosing to overflow into each other, as two blazing fires choosing to dance together, as two complete symphonies choosing to harmonize, two whole beings choosing to share their wholeness. Not clinging to each other to fill voids, not merging to escape loneliness, not coming together because they can't stand to be apart, but joining because their togetherness creates something even more beautiful than their individual completeness. Two sovereign souls choosing to dance together, each with their own rhythm, their own music, their own movement, but finding that when they come together, the dance becomes sacred, becomes art, becomes a living prayer. Two divine expressions choosing to merge not out of need, but out of overflow. Not because they're empty and seeking to be filled, but because they're so full that sharing becomes the natural next expression of their abundance. This is when the dance changes. This is when the exhausting, painful, soul-crushing pattern finally shifts into something else entirely. This is when the push and pull stops, when the cycle of intimacy followed by distance, connection followed by separation, hope followed by disappointment finally comes to an end. This is when the runner and chaser dynamic dissolves, when the painful roles you've been playing, the parts you've been assigned in this cosmic drama, the patterns that have been running your connection finally release their grip. Because there's no one running, there's no one fleeing from the intensity, no one overwhelmed by the mirror, no one terrified of the transformation this connection demands. There's no one chasing. There's no one desperately pursuing, no one trying to convince or prove or make someone see, no one sacrificing their dignity in the hopes of being chosen. There are just two souls, each doing their own work, each facing their own shadows, each healing their own wounds, each integrating their own lessons, each walking their own path, each following their own guidance, each honoring their own journey without trying to control or manipulate or force the others, each becoming their own wholeness, each claiming their own sovereignty, each embodying their own divinity. And as they do, as they rise into their highest expressions, as they shed the old programming and step into their authentic power, as they heal the wounds that kept them in separation consciousness, they naturally, inevitably, divinely come back into alignment, not because they're trying, not because they're forcing or manifesting or doing techniques to make it happen, but because they're ready. Because the work has been done, because the healing has occurred, because the transformation has taken place that makes union possible, not because they need each other, not because they're incomplete without the other, not because they can't survive alone, but because they're finally able to meet each other. As equals, not as teacher and student, not as healer and wounded, not as awakened and asleep, but as two sovereign beings standing in their own power. As partners, not as savior and victim, not as pursuer and pursued, not as the one who loves more and the one who runs away. As mirrors reflecting the divine back to itself, showing each other the truth of who they are, reflecting the God and goddess in each other, being the living proof of the divine's infinite capacity to love itself through human experience. The frequency aligns when both souls choose truth over fear. When both stop hiding, stop pretending, stop performing, stop protecting themselves from the vulnerability this connection demands. When both souls choose presence over performance. When both stop trying to be what they think the other wants and start being who they actually are. When both stop playing roles and start showing up authentically. When both stop managing perceptions and start living in raw, honest, unfiltered truth. When both souls choose love over protection. When both are willing to risk being hurt again, willing to lower the walls, willing to trust despite past betrayals, willing to stay open even when it would be easier, to shut down. And that alignment doesn't happen through force, through pushing, through demanding, through trying to control the timing or the outcome or the other person's choices. It happens through surrender, through releasing your grip on how it should look, through letting go of your timeline, through accepting what is rather than fighting for what you think should be. Through trust, through believing that this connection is divinely guided even when it doesn't make logical sense, through knowing that there's a higher plan even when you can't see it, through having faith that you're being led somewhere beautiful even when the path is dark, through faith, through continuing to believe in the connection even without evidence, through holding the vision even when reality contradicts it, through knowing in your soul what your eyes cannot yet see, through the deep knowing that what's meant for you will never miss you. That if this union is part of your soul contract, if this connection is divinely ordained, if this love is written in the stars, nothing can prevent it from manifesting when the time is right. That divine timing is perfect timing. That the delays are not denials, that the waiting is not punishment, that the space between where you are and where you want to be is not empty, but full of necessary preparation, that the universe is not withholding, not keeping your good from you, not testing you unnecessarily, not being cruel or indifferent to your pain. It's preparing you, refining your energy, healing your wounds, expanding your capacity, teaching you lessons, building your strength, developing your wisdom. Preparing him, taking him through his own journey, his own dark night, his own transformation, his own awakening that cannot be rushed or bypassed. Preparing the space between you for something so sacred, so profound, so transformative that it requires both of you to be fully ready. For a love so powerful it would destroy you if you tried to hold it before you'd done the inner work. For a union so intense it would burn through any remaining illusions. For a connection so deep it demands complete authenticity and vulnerability and presence. What was once push and pull becomes flow. What was once an exhausting dance of advancing and retreating transforms into a natural, effortless movement of energy between two people who trust the rhythm. What was once tension becomes ease. What was once anxiety and stress and constant worry about the connection shifts into relaxation and peace and confidence in what you share. What was once painful becomes peaceful. What was once triggering and activating. And bringing up every wound transforms into something that feels like home, like safety, like coming back to yourself. Not because the love has diminished, not because the intensity has faded, not because the connection has become less significant, but because the fear has dissolved. The terror of abandonment, the anxiety about losing them, the panic about whether they'll choose you, all of. It releases its grip when you're standing in your own wholeness. Not because the connection has weakened, but because it's actually grown stronger, because the foundation has solidified, because the bond has been tested and proven unbreakable, but because it's strengthened, matured, evolved, moved from the unstable ground of need and codependency to the solid foundation of mutual wholeness and conscious choice, into something that doesn't need constant validation or proof or reassurance, into something that just is, into something you know in your bones regardless of circumstances, into something that exists independent of text messages or phone calls or physical presence. Steady, certain, unshakable. This is union consciousness. This is the energetic state where reunion becomes possible, where the 3D can finally catch up to the 5D, where the physical reality can align with the spiritual truth. And it begins long before the physical reunion. It begins in your energy, in your consciousness, in your internal state, not in the external circumstances. It begins the moment you stop fighting the journey and start trusting it. The moment you surrender to the process, embrace the lessons, accept the timing, and recognize that everything is happening for you, not to you. So, beloved, let this be your reminder, your permission slip, your wake-up call, your invitation to step into the truth you've always known, but perhaps been afraid to fully claim. You were never waiting for him. You were always waiting for yourself. Waiting for your own arrival, your own awakening, your own remembering of who you truly are beneath all the layers of conditioning and trauma and false beliefs. Waiting for the moment you would finally choose you. Finally prioritize your own healing, finally honor your own needs, finally put yourself first without guilt or apology. Finally honor you. Finally treat yourself with the reverence you've been giving to him. Finally respect your own boundaries. Finally acknowledge your own worth. Finally love you the way you've been loving him, with the same intensity, the same devotion, the same unwavering commitment, the same forgiveness, the same patience, the same unconditional acceptance. And now, as you step fully into your sovereignty, into your power as the conscious creator of your reality, into your role as the queen of your own life, into your stillness, into the peaceful center where you're no longer reactive or desperate or grasping, but simply present and grounded and certain, into your truth, into the authentic expression of who you are without apology or performance or people-pleasing. Union does not just approach, it begins. It begins now, in this moment, in your energy, in your consciousness, not at some future date when he finally shows up. It begins in the quiet knowing that you are whole, in the deep cellular certainty that you are complete, that you are enough, that you lack nothing, that you are already everything you've been seeking. It begins in the peaceful acceptance that divine timing is perfect, in the surrender to what is, in the trust that everything is unfolding exactly as it should, in the faith that the universe's timing is wiser than your own preferences. It begins in the radiant embodiment of your own worth, in the way you carry yourself, in the standards you set, in the boundaries you maintain, in the love you give yourself, in the life you build that reflects your value. And when he does, when he finally stops running and starts returning, when he finally surrenders to what his soul has known all along, when he finally chooses to walk toward you instead of away, he won't come back as the man who left. He won't be the same person who ran, who ghosted, who chose fear over love, who couldn't handle the intensity. He'll come back as the man who's ready, the man who's done the work, who's faced his shadows, who's healed his wounds, who's integrated his lessons, who's grown into his own sovereignty, the man who's done the work, who's been through his own dark night of the soul, who's confronted his own demons, who's shed his own layers of false identity, who's awakened to his own divinity, the man who can hold you, honor you, meet you in the depths you've been calling him to, who can match your energy, who can handle your intensity, who can see your soul, who can love you the way you deserve, who can be the partner you've been preparing for. And you, standing in your power, rooted in your truth, embodied in your sovereignty, grounded in your worth, certain in your value, confident in your wholeness, will be ready to receive him, not as your savior, not as the one who rescues you from loneliness or validates your existence or makes your life worth living, as your equal, as someone who matches your energy, who stands in their own power, tell me in the comments, have you felt this shift when you stopped chasing and started embodying? What changed in you when you chose yourself fully? Your insight may be the medicine another soul needs today. And remember, beloved, you are not alone in this journey. You are held, you are guided, you are divinely supported every step of the way. Trust the unfolding, trust the timing, trust yourself, because everything you've been waiting for is already on its way to you.